Hi, ladybugs. How are we doing tonight? Sorry, I'm just setting up my tripod. So you guys got tipped upside down for a minute. I hope you're not too dizzy by it. Anyway, how are y'all doing? All right, and we'll turn it sideways. Sorry if I didn't turn it sideways immediately. All right. How's everybody doing tonight? Is everybody having a good day? Oh. I am a little bit tired. Oh. Sorry, I'm not straight. There we go. Okay, that's better, huh? Here's a chuggy bear. There's a chuggy bear there. There's a chuggy bear there. Hi. Where's there a chuggy bear? There's a chuggy bear. There's a tiny dancer, huh? There's a chuggy and a tiny. There's a chuggy and a tiny. And here's my Bing. Move, guys, move. Come on, move. No, go lay down. Move. Here's my Bing Ding. Here's my baby. Oh. We're going to read our story after we do our video. That's his signal that it's bedtime. He's gotten really good at expecting his stories at night, huh? Oh, that's my baby. This little man holds a special place in my heart because of the condition he was in when we got him. Not just that, he's a sweet boy too, but you know, he was so bad off when we got him, and now he's just a little miracle puppy, huh? Are you the miracle baby, huh? Are you the miracle baby, Bing? Say hi to the aunties. Say hi to the aunties, yeah. Say hi to the aunties, huh? Yeah, there's my boy. Oh, there's my Bing, huh? There's my Bing Bing. All right. You gonna lay down while Mommy plays with the babies, huh? You gonna lay down? Yeah, Mommy's gotta play with babies. It's not bingo baby chat. It's reborn baby chat. We should start a channel that's bingo baby chat, huh? Bingo baby chat. Bingo baby chat. Oh, my boy. I love this little man so much. He's just taken my heart. He has just stolen my heart, this little boy. Look at this sweetness. Look at this little sweet boy. Can you blame me? He is such a little love, huh? Okay, ready, bub? Here, I'm gonna put you right next to me, okay? There you go. You can lay right there, okay, while Mommy does her video. All right, So I decided to name the new baby Ansley Michelle. Huh. Chuggy Bear. I would have named her Chuggy Bear, but that name's already taken, huh? Okay, you guys go lay down. Mommy's got to do her babies. No, no growling, sir. Go on, guys. Go lay down. It's a long day for me. It starts at 10 a.m. when I get up. My alarm goes off at 10. And then I do bingo, his blood sugar, feed him his breakfast, give him his insulin, and then after that takes me about a half an hour, so it's about 10:30, and then I have an hour, give or take, to sit down and not do anything, which is like the only hour of the day that I have, really, where I can sit down and like literally not do anything. And then around 11:30, between 11:30 and 12, it's time to get the dog's lunch started. And that takes about an hour because I have to do all the medications, heat up the lunch, serve it, clean the dishes, you know, clean the kitchen, whatever. And so that takes me till about 12:30, 1 o'clock, depending on when I start. And then I have, generally I have a few minutes to sit, like literally a few minutes, like maybe 10 or 15 minutes to sit before I have to start dinner. And then I generally, not always, but generally spend all afternoon cooking dinner. And then we eat dinner. And then I clean up from dinner. And then if there's dessert, which a lot of times there is, then I have to get dessert going. No, lay down, Tiny. And then after that, thank you for the kisses, Bubba. And also in the afternoon, I get any cleaning, picking up, anything that needs to get done. Feeding Winston, feeding Jericho. No, we're not going to nuzzle in the clothes. Just lay down. And then, no, sir, thank you. And then, I don't know. It just goes on and on. There's always little things that need to be done. You know, several little things add up. And then, you know, before you know it, a couple hours is gone. And then right around 9 or then usually between like 7 or 6 and 9, I kind of have some free time if there's nothing little to be done. And then at 9:30, it's time to do bingo again. Stop growling. There's nobody there. It's time to do bingo again, you know, do his insulin, blood sugar, feeding him. And then I also have to feed Nini and Oreo at that time and Joey. Would you stop it? And then stop growling. And then after that, then I get to relax for a bit. And then at 11:30, my alarm goes off to give Nini her last medication. So some days it feels very easy and other days it feels very hard. Sometimes it just feels like it's overwhelming. There's so much to do and my body just doesn't have the energy. So sometimes it's really hard. Like the last couple of days, we've had dinner and dessert, and the last few days it just has felt like a lot. Normally I don't complain because normally it doesn't feel like that much, you know? But some days when there's more to do, it feels like a lot, and it is a lot. And it wears me out pretty easy. So the last couple days have definitely been a little bit more stuff, and I'm tired. You know, that's the thing about being a stay-at-home parent or a stay-at-home spouse is that, you know, you don't get vacation days, you don't get weekends. You know, you don't get to punch out at a certain time. You keep going until everything's done, however long that takes, you know. I think that's what's forgotten about stay-at-home people, you know, is that when you work a job, yes, you're the one bringing in the paycheck, and that's wonderful, but when your day is over, you know, and weekends are your days to do nothing. And for someone who works inside the home, you know, you don't have any vacation days. There are no vacation days. There are no weekends that you can, you know, just say, well, I'm not going to do anything, because even on weekends, people still need to eat, you know. Holidays, people still need to eat, and the holidays are usually more work. So it's tiring, and sometimes it feels like it never ends, you know. But that's life. And I knew that that was the case when I chose this path, you know. Like, I could have gone out and gotten a job and worked outside the home, but I prefer to work inside the home. I like to make sure my home is running smoothly. I like to make sure that my family is being fed well. You know, we don't do boxed food or canned food ever. You know, I make everything from scratch. I like to make sure my home is running smoothly. I like to make sure that, you know, when my kids were young, they were dressed and bathed and their hair was done and they got off to school on time and all that. You know, they had a good breakfast before they left the house, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it just, you know, it's just a lot. I think the thing that made me the most frustrated is my ex, when we were fighting for custody, used to tell the courts that I never got out of bed and my kids had to get themselves off to school and they had to, you know, cook their own dinner. And that has never happened, like ever, never. My kids have always had dinner cooked for them. I always was up with them to go to school. You know, even Katie, when she was in the extended high school as, you know, a legal adult. I made sure she was up every day, off to school. She didn't have breakfast here at that point because she was eating breakfast at school, but so I didn't have to cook her breakfast, but I always made sure she was up, she was clean, she was dressed, she was ready for school, you know, and that went on till she was 21. And I think that was always the most hurtful thing with my ex, was he would always make these accusations, and he knew they weren't true. He knew what kind of mother I was. He just, you know, would say whatever he could to get himself a leg up. It never worked because the courts didn't believe it, because they had spoken to my children and they knew, you know, the courts knew that I was always up with them. They were never latchkey kids. You know, I was here when they got up and went to school. I was here when they came home. You know, I made them dinner, you know, I did their laundry, you know, all that kind of stuff. So his lies never worked in his favor, but he tried. And that always bothered me the most, because I did try so hard to be a good mom and really take good care of my kids, you know. So I think that was always the lie that bothered me the most, was that I would neglect my children, because my whole family, my whole biological family has lost their children to the state. Look how cute. And so I didn't get pregnant on a whim, you know, like, well, my second daughter was a surprise, but, you know, I planned my first daughter, and you know, I really was very intentional about being a mother. You know, I knew that things like moving too many times could give them instability. You know, every decision I made was centered around them and making sure that they had a good life, you know. She's so cute. You're so cute, Clarabelle. And so, yeah, so I think that, you know, everything I did when my kids were young, you know, was very intentional, you know. I didn't make random decisions, you know. I made sure that my kids came first, and I thought about how every decision would affect them. So yeah, so anyway, I think that, you know, whatever, it is what it is. The day my youngest daughter turned 18, I sent him a not very nice message, and I'm not going to repeat it because it was really not nice. But the basic gist of the message was, I have no reason to keep in contact with you anymore. Don't message me ever again. Have a nice life. Bye. That was basically the message. He had done nothing for years but try to make my life miserable. He was the whole reason I got in trouble with the law. So yeah, one day my daughter turned 18, I was pretty happy to be done with that, you know. I don't have any reason to keep in touch with you, so go fly a kite, basically, is what it said. It was the happiest message I ever sent, because I knew that I didn't have any reason to have any contact with him anymore. My daughters were all adults. You know, any contact about my daughters he could have directly with them. They were no longer minors. I had no reason to keep in contact with him. So that was probably the best message I ever sent, because it was finality. You know, it was closure. It was like, okay, now we're done with this. And that was the best message I ever got to send. I was so excited about it. Just because he, you know, like, we had actually been really good friends when we separated. For the first few years, we were actually really good friends. We spent holidays together, you know, for the kids' sake. We spent holidays together. We had, you know, dinner a few times a week together. He would come over and see the kids. He didn't really take them to his house at that point because, you know, they were still pretty young. And so you know, but we were really good friends. And then when he got a new girlfriend, she was really insecure with herself. You know, she didn't want him to have any female friends, even though it was best for my kids. She didn't want him to have any female friends. So any goodwill that we had before he met her was over when he met her, because she made it like, oh, you know, she's using you and this and that. And I wasn't getting any child support, no alimony, nothing like that, you know. I was just, you know, we were just sharing custody of the kids, and she just, you know, she just ruined that relationship. And what sucked about that was not for me, you know, it was for the kids. You know, things were good for the kids that we were friends, you know. It was good for the kids, you know, and I left him, so I didn't want him back, you know, but it was good for the kids that we had a good relationship and we were friends and they could count on us both. And when she came along, she was just one of those women who was very insecure and didn't want him to have any relationships with a female, even with me. And that made me very sad for her, but also very sad for my daughters, because, you know, it was really good for them when we were friends, you know. It was a really good example for our kids. And it was working really well, you know. You know, he would come over whenever he had time and see the kids, and we had dinners together and holidays together, and things were really good for the first couple of years. I think about 2.5 years after we split. Things were really good. And then he met her. Here's my advice. If you are with a man who has children with another woman, please don't get in the middle of that relationship between your your spouse and his ex. Because it's not about the adults, it's about the kids. And the best thing you can do for the kids is to stay on friendly terms and share custody. We never would have gone to court. Well, he took me to court, but we never would have gone to court if we had maintained that friendship. We would have just worked it out between us. But unfortunately, we couldn't. She wouldn't let it happen, and she finally talked him into taking me to court. And then he had to pay child support, and it sucked. I mean, he didn't have to pay much. I think it was $50 a month, so it wasn't like it was breaking him. But, you know, the point is that, you know, it was in the best interest of our children for us to maintain a civil, friendly relationship. And she ruined that, and it really did a detriment to our kids, you know. So, you know, we weren't sleeping together, you know, nothing was going on. We were just friends for our kids' sake. And that just wasn't good enough for her. So all I can say is the only ones that got hurt in that situation, or the ones who mainly got hurt in that situation, was my kids. You know, it would have been much better for them if we had stayed friends. So if you have an ex, or you're with somebody who has kids with somebody else, please support that relationship between the two parents, not for them, but for the kids. If you don't trust your spouse or your partner enough, hold on one second, that he can be friends with someone of the opposite sex, then you have no business having a relationship with somebody that you have that little trust in, you know what I mean? If you can't trust him to be around his ex without, you know, going to bed, then he's going to go to bed with somebody else, you know? And it's a waste of your time and his, and it damages the children. That's all I'm saying. It would have been much better for us and for my kids if we had stayed friendly, you know, and we had been able to continue that friendship for our kids' sake, but it just didn't happen. So I don't know. I would never be with somebody that I couldn't trust. You know what I mean? I would never be in a relationship with somebody that I was always worried was going to be sleeping with somebody else. Because I don't think that's any way to live, you know? To live like that is to, like, be constantly on edge. I can't even imagine how horrible it would be to be in a relationship like that, where you don't trust your partner and where you're constantly worried that they're going to bed with somebody. I think that would be a horrible way to live, you know? You should always support the relationship between your spouse and their children. And if it, and they should be friends with the other parent. That's the best thing for the kids. And it teaches the kids things too for their own lives. So that's just my advice. You can take it or leave it. I know it would have been much better for my girls had Ken and I stayed friends, but unfortunately, his girlfriend, who became his wife, was just too insecure in herself. Oh, sorry, I'm sweating. It's hot. I just got finished doing the dishes from the last feeding. Look how pretty she is. This is Ansley Michelle. Isn't she pretty? Oh, this looks so cute on her. She looks good in pastels. So tonight we dressed Clarabelle and little Miss Ansley. I think she is a perfect twin to Ashwin. They just look so much alike. In fact, I had Ashwin and Amari as twins, but Ansley looks much closer to Ashwin than Amari does, although Amari's beautiful. She just doesn't look like his twin. Look how cute this looks. And she's got little ruffled socks on, look. I love ruffled socks. So there's Miss Ansley. Ansley. All right, ladybugs, we dressed Clarabelle and Ansley. Let's take a look at them before we log off. Let me scoot forward. Here's Ansley. Her little pink bow. There's Ansley. And then here's Clarabelle. Hold on. There's little Miss Clarabelle wearing her butterfly shorts and t-shirt. She's so cute. She's the Lyra, and Ansley is the Tegan. Aren't they adorable? Mwah. Love you, Clarabelle. Love you, Clara. Oh, you're so cute. You're so cute. All right, guys, I will talk to you later. I love you. Give all your babies kisses from me tonight, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, ladybugs.